Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. An American Airlines subsidiary plane with 64 people on board collides midair with a military helicopter in Washington, D.C., prompting a huge search and rescue operation in the Potomac River. Also ahead, no hurry to cut. Jerome Powell says the Fed is waiting to see more progress on US inflation. After keeping rates unchanged, the ECB expected to cut later today. And Meta climbs post-market as Mark Zuckerberg predicts a, quote, really big year for AI. While it's a mixed bag of results for Microsoft and Tesla, we look ahead to Apple and Intel results. So we begin with that developing story in the US where a passenger plane has collided with a military helicopter mid-air in Washington, D.C. A search and rescue operation is underway in the Potomac River where the plane crashed. Let's get more details from Bloomberg's aviation reporter, Danny Lee. Danny, what is the latest?
So we have at least 18 bodies that have been recovered from the river so far, according to CBS. Now, as details still unfold, we don't have any word on any more casualties or potential fatalities, but this was an accident that took place at 9 p.m., just after 9 p.m. on Wednesday. And as we saw, subsequent, a huge search and rescue operation in the Potomac River in the nation's capital, just outside Ronald Reagan Airport, where this mid-air collision took place between a subsidiary of an American Airlines jet, a regional jet, and also a Black Hawk helicopter. We have a press conference currently live going on at the moment, and we'll be monitoring headlines for that. And terminal subscribers can see that on our T Live pages. But at the moment, we've heard some swift reaction from the likes of President Trump, who has said that this was a collision that should have been prevented. And we've also heard from American Airlines CEO Robert Isom, who expressed his deep sorrow for this tragedy. And so as the hours go on, we'll like to see more details, and particularly this investigation, a rapid investigation being launched, led by the NTSB, the Air Accident Investigation Team, and also the Department of Defense.
OK, Bloomberg's aviation reporter Danny Lee, thank you. You can see that live press conference right now. We keep across this story for you, of course, throughout this hour. We'll be getting an update in the next 20 minutes or so from Danny, and the team are monitoring what is unfolding, of course, in Washington, D.C. This is a live situation, and the press conference continues. We're going to switch focus now to the earnings story in Europe. And let's get you the latest lines coming through from the drug maker Roche, of course, over in Switzerland. Here's the redhead across the terminal. Roche seeing full year 2025 sales increase in the mid-single-digit range. Mid-single-digit range increase for the full year 2025 in terms of sales. This stock is up 18% over the last 12 months. The focus is on the forecast, is on the pipeline. M&A as well expected to be scrutinised, their appetite for further deals. Roche sees an opportunity to further increase the dividend. That's another line crossing. In terms of core earnings per share full year, coming in at 18.8 Swiss francs. That is above the estimates. So in terms of full year core earnings per share, it's a beat for Roche. Operating profit just below the estimates in terms of operating profit for the full year. To the banking space right now, Deutsche Bank, the redhead for Germany's largest lender. Fourth quarter FIC and trading revenue coming in with a solid beat for Deutsche Bank in terms of fixed income and currencies and trading. 1.9 billion euros, estimates of 1.77 billion euros. So a solid beat for the German lender. Deutsche Bank shares up 67% over the last 12 months. We're going to hear in just under half an hour from Deutsche Bank's CFO. To the semiconductor space and ST Micro over in France, which has faced challenges in terms of inventories for those chips that they supply into the industrial space and autos. Currently, the redhead across ST Micro, the first quarter net revenue coming in below estimates. It's a miss for ST Micro. First quarter net revenue coming in at $2.5 billion. The estimates had been for $2.73 billion. So a miss for ST Micro. Again, a semiconductor maker that has been challenged by higher inventories. Let's stay on the earnings story because, of course, we got a number of big-ticket earnings coming through from the likes of Meta, Microsoft and IBM overnight, of course. A mixed picture, really, when it comes to US tech earnings. Meta saying that sales in the current quarter will fall short of estimates. Shares gaining, though, in extended trading after CEO Mark Zuckerberg predicted that 2025 will be, quote, a really big year for AI, with Meta planning to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to ensure its dominance. Meanwhile, Microsoft shares fell after it warned that the growth of its cloud computing business is being hampered by a shortage of data centers. Its Azure cloud division is forecast to grow 32% this quarter, which is not much more than it grew in the final 3 months of 2024. And Tesla shares were up, despite its earnings actually missing forecasts. CEO Elon Musk announcing plans to begin robotaxi operations in June and has forecast, quote, an epic period of growth. Joining me now, I'm very pleased to say, to break things down on this front is Matt Bloxham from Bloomberg Intelligence. Matt, there's a lot to work through. What stood out to you and the team?
Well, part of it is interesting, actually, that they've all got kind of a positive narrative. It's all about AI, but, Microsoft falling, Tesla and Meta gaining. I think it's more about the emphasis they're putting on the kind of future, very much kind of Meta and Tesla kind of saying, forget about the kind of short term. This is still a massive growth opportunity to look at all these exciting things we're doing that over the mid to long term are going to kind of make us really kind of bigger companies than we are today. Whereas I'd say Microsoft hampered to some degree by the short term challenges of this huge growth we're seeing, that you just can't build enough data centers quick enough to meet that demand. Because it's interesting, Microsoft said they've got $300 billion of committed contracts they have to deliver against over the midterm. So they've got a huge runway of demand. And they're probably quite frustrated that investors weren't picking up on that. They were picking up more on the issues around kind of booking that as revenue in the near term.
It's really interesting, isn't it, in terms of how we think about DeepSeek and the impact there. As you were saying, did you say $300 billion in terms of
yes.
that they have to deliver on, and they need to build out the data centers to deliver on that? And yet the questions leading into the earnings were, will they actually be dialing back CapEx? Because suddenly models can be produced cheaper and more efficiently with lower-end chips.
Exactly, and we don't see that happening anytime soon. If that happens at all, it's a 2026 and beyond story, the way I see it. And, what we're seeing, like Meta very much talked up the DeepSeek development, those kind of innovations that they can build into their own technology. And we heard the same thing from Microsoft too. So I think those players, this is where the kind of the bulls and the bears about DeepSeek are coming out, is that, yes, it's going to drive down costs. Microsoft say they're doing that already in OpenAI, but that actually that lower cost base maybe stimulates faster growth in the adoption of generative AI. So maybe you still have the overall demand, perhaps just the kind of revenue mix looks a bit different. It's more volume for better value.
And interestingly, Microsoft offering now DeepSeek to its customers as well. Talking of OpenAI, we have the news being reported by Bloomberg that SoftBank is looking to invest a significant amount potentially in OpenAI. What are the details there? And what are the implications potentially of Masayoshi-son increasing his stake in that business?
So $15 to $25 billion is what we're hearing is the kind of initial investment that negotiations are centering on, with potentially up to $40 billion over time. That would be on top of the $15 billion that they're already investing in this Stargate data center business. So, it consistent with the noises SoftBank have been making about, investing more in the US to kind of fit the Trump narrative. So perhaps not a big surprise there. And I think, definitely OpenAI needs cash flow and capital injections to fund its own big investments in building out more capability, investing in the technology, continuing to protect its position as one of the leading open source AI companies in the world, not just the US.
Okay, it's a reminder that it is still, at least for now, about investment as well, in terms of ring-fencing some of these innovations. Matt Bloxham, always smart, from Bloomberg Intelligence, breaking down the tech earnings for us and the implications of that potential huge investment coming through from SoftBank for OpenAI. Let's get to the market check right now, because, of course, the Federal Reserve decision, not a surprise that they held, but the language from Jay Powell was in focus, and he seems, along with other FOMC officials, to be in no rush to cut rates further. Interesting as well, the lines coming through in terms of how they're thinking about Trump's policies, the uncertainty there, and that is certainly one aspect that the Fed and Jay Powell seem to be weighing up. with increased attention. European futures pointing to gains of 0.3% after European equities punched through a fresh record yesterday. The focus in Europe on the earnings story today. FTSE 100 futures pointing lower by 0.1%. S&P futures stateside after some softness yesterday pointing to gains of 0.3%. And Nasdaq 100 futures with that tech-heavy index, of course, tech-heavy component, pointing to gains of 0.6%. We will be watching, of course, after those earnings, the likes of Meta and Tesla, particularly given the optimistic tone that was coming through around AI. Let's flip the board and have a look cross-asset then. US 10-year Treasury in focus. As a result, we've been hearing from Jay Powell. 450 run right now on the benchmark 10-year. The Japanese yen in focus as well. We have the Bank of Japan's governor, deputy governor speaking. Maybe expectations are building from some traders that he could sound a hawkish tone. 154 right now in the Japanese yen. $76 a barrel on Brent, and gold 0.1% higher so far in the session. So, to Fed Chair Jerome Powell saying that the central bank will wait for further evidence of cooling inflation before adjusting interest rates again. The Fed voted unanimously to keep the benchmark rate on hold. Powell says they want to see what policies the Trump administration will enact before assessing their impact on the economy.
With our policy stance significantly less restrictive than it had been and the economy remaining strong, we do not need to be in a hurry to adjust our policy stance.
For more, let's bring in Bloomberg Airlines strategist Mark Cranfield. Mark, this is a Fed that is not in skipping mode, it is on hold mode, and it seems like the policy uncertainty around Trump is a factor.
Yeah, certainly. As you mentioned earlier, they've clearly taken that into account. When traders take a second look at what happened yesterday, I mean, the Fed themselves are probably pretty happy. They caused very little disruption to the market. Volatility on the day was very low, and US markets are really not looking too much different than where they were last night when you look at the futures markets. But the part that's probably most interesting for investors is that Jerome Powell, they tweaked the language slightly on inflation, but they made it very clear in the press conference that there is no room for negotiation on the 2% inflation target. Now, that will be taken as mildly hawkish, because some people would have been hoping that since inflation has come down so far and that the outlook maybe by now is a bit more benign, that would give them room to lower interest rates further this year. So if you look at the pricing for what traders are looking at, we're looking at less than 2 interest rate cuts for the rest of this year. That's a slightly more negative tone than we had yesterday. When people look at it again, they'll probably say that was the swing factor. And if anything, it's a slightly hawkish read on Fed Powell.
What is the read across to the BOJ then, Mark? This is a central bank that I know you have certainly the finger on the pulse of. Does it open the doors for the BOJ to be a little bit more hawkish as investors now pricing stronger yen?
Yeah, it's very interesting here because, as you were saying, Deputy Governor Himino is going to speak very shortly. He was the guy that set up the rate hike this month. It was his speech a week before that did the trick. Even before he stands up today, we've had a big Bloomberg story saying that the Bank of Japan is going to reduce one part of its lending program by July. Now, that means another step in quantitative tightening. The Bank of Japan is quietly reducing its balance sheet while almost nobody notices. So clearly, the messaging here, whichever way you cut it, is that Governor Ueda is a man who doesn't like unconventional policies, and he's removing them step by step. And they've done it again. And the yen is already a little bit stronger today, even before the deputy governor speaks. So clearly, they're on the path. It's just a question of, as the doors open, they will push through the rate hikes. At the moment, nobody's expecting March. But then again, not many people were expecting January. They ramped up the tension just in the last 2 weeks before the decision. That could happen again. Traders are not being complacent. They're expecting that Himino could be again lighting the fuse, and they could be getting ready to do something in March.
OK, lighting the fuse. I'm going to bring you an update of some of his comments as well in the next couple of seconds. Bloomberg Airlines strategist Mark Cranfield, excellent. Thank you. Breaking down the Fed decision and, of course, what to expect from the BOJ. Talking of which, the Deputy Governor is saying that real rates in Japan remain in negative territory, even after the hikes, of course, to 0.5%. The Bank of Japan Deputy Governor saying and speaking in Tokyo, saying that we'll raise rates if the outlook is realised. The BOJ will raise rates further if the outlook is realised. That's coming through from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Japan. We'll keep across those lines for you. The Japanese yen is stronger in the session by 0.4%, trading at 154.63 versus the US dollar. Right, let's switch focus back to the unfolding news event that is in D.C., which, of course, is this tragic plane crash in Washington, D.C., a passenger plane colliding with a military helicopter. This is a live press conference right now from Reagan Airport, which was the destination for this aircraft. I believe we can listen in.
Yeah, and I don't think we can comment on that. Our focus is on getting the passengers and crew out of the water.
And just one more clarification, because earlier we got guidance that DCA was going to be shut down at least until Friday at 5 a.m. I just heard
11 a.m.
11 a.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We can take a few more questions. A question here, a question here, and here. Yeah.
Mayor Bowser, can you just confirm, has anybody been transported to the hospital?
I can't say anything about the rescue operation right now. Who was next? Yes.
Yeah, Chief Donnelly, can you speak a little bit more about the unified command who leads this phase of the rescue and recovery? At what point do you then change phases? And can you describe to us the scene as best you can when first responders first arrived?
So I happened to be listening to the radio this evening when the call came out. I listened to the responders come in, and the initial response, they were very professional, trying to locate this. This is, if you can imagine, the river is a large black spot at night with no lights on it, except for a few buoy lights. So they were out there looking. The boats pretty quickly were able to locate one of the aircraft and get there. So that's what's going on right now. Everybody's working on that. We will reevaluate where we are with the rescue operation in the morning when we get a better sense of it, but we are still out there working, and we're going to continue that throughout the night.
Do you have a sense that there are survivors?
We don't know yet, but we're working.
Is any part of the search happening over land?
No, we're all in the water.
OK, that is the live press conference right now at Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., as officials there, of course, law enforcement and the mayor respond to questions, of course, about this unfolding event. We know so far that a jet flown for American Airlines collided with a military helicopter. The plane was carrying 64 people. We have no information on possible casualties, though there are reports that 18 bodies have been recovered in the accident so far, according to reports. We continue to monitor this story for you. Coming up, the European Central Bank expected to cut by 25 basis points today. We are live in Frankfurt with a preview. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back. The ECB widely expected to cut interest rates by another quarter point this afternoon, but traders will be looking out for what policymakers say about the path ahead. Let's cross over right now to Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden, who's outside the ECB in Frankfurt for us. A rate cut appears to be done, a kind of a done deal today. Lizzie, talk us through what to expect.
Yeah, the ECB pretty much on autopilot, Tom, this meeting and at the next one in March. Or that's what economists unanimously assume about today. The reason is they need to resuscitate the euro area economy. And we'll get another read on that at 10 a.m. London time. We get the fourth quarter euro area GDP numbers. But of course, the whole region beleaguered when it comes to growth, but particularly France and Germany because of their politics. Now, beyond March, that's where things get really hairy. April is the real battleground meeting. By then, we should have a bit more clarity, hopefully, on Donald Trump's tariff plans for Europe, although, of course, those can change at the drop of a hat. We'll have the result of the German election. We'll have the updated forecasts as well. Most economists, interestingly, do not see Christine Lagarde in the press conference today dropping hints about the future path ahead. She'll want to keep her cards close to her chest. But as things move ahead, we have heard from the likes of France's François Villeroy de Gallo saying that he is prepared to take the deposit rate to 2% by June. Klaas Knot for the Netherlands saying that he's not willing yet to go that far or not to pin his cards to that in particular. But the closer we get to 2%, which is where many think is neutral, the Hawks see it as higher, that is when the debate is going to hot up here in Frankfurt, Tom.
OK, Lizzie Burden, thank you. With the preview of the ECB decision fully expected by traders to cut. Lizzie will be across that story, of course, for us throughout the day. Currently, markets pricing at about 90 basis points of cuts by the end of the year, getting to just with the slimmest margin above 2% by December the 18th. Now, we're going to have special coverage, of course, of the ECB decision from 1:15 p.m. UK time. And we will bring you that news conference with Christine Lagarde at 1:45 p.m. Plenty more coming up. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Some other stories making news this Thursday. President Trump says he will order the Pentagon and Department of Homeland Security to prepare a facility at Guantanamo Bay that could house as many as 30,000 undocumented migrants. Trump said the Guantanamo effort could double U.S. capacity for migrant detentions. It's part of a much broader overhaul, of course, of immigration policy. And Bloomberg has learned that the Trump administration is exploring additional curbs on the sale of NVIDIA chips to China. Sources say officials are focused on chips used for AI development that have already been scaled down to meet existing restrictions. NVIDIA shares fell on the news, extending a rocky week for the chipmaker. And a group of American investors vying to buy TikTok has secured more than $20 billion for their offer. That's according to Jesse Tinsley, the tech entrepreneur organising the bid. The group has also recruited 2 additional tech bosses as investors, including the Roblox co-founder and CEO. Last week, President Trump signed an executive order to delay enforcing a law that would ban TikTok in the US unless ByteDance divests. Coming up, we're going to hear from the CFO of Deutsche Bank. That after the largest bank, of course, largest lender in Germany, came through with higher revenue, largely on the back of debt trading. That is an important conversation. We will be airing it for you in the next couple of minutes. The interview with Deutsche Bank's CFO is next. This is Bloomberg. Good morning, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. An American Airlines subsidiary plane with 64 people on board collides midair with a military helicopter in Washington, D.C., prompting a huge search and rescue operation in the Potomac River. Officials say recovery operations could take several days. No hurry to cut. Jerome Powell says the Fed is waiting to see more progress on US inflation after keeping rates unchanged. The ECB expected to cut later today. And Meta climbs post-market as Mark Zuckerberg predicts, quote, a really big year for AI, while it's a mixed bag of results for Microsoft and Tesla. Apple and Intel results come later today. And we've had a flurry of earnings, of course, across the European space. Deutsche Bank coming through with a beat. Costs are something of a challenge. We're going to hear from the CFO in the next minute or so. You've also had numbers crossing from the likes of Roche and SD Micro. SD Micro still suffering and being impacted by a build-out in inventories, particularly around the industrial space for that chip maker. European stock futures, though, pointed to gains of 0.3% after breaking through fresh records yesterday. FTSE 100 futures are down 0.1%. S&P futures pointed to gains of 0.3%. Nasdaq 100 futures set for a strong day, pointing high by 117 points. Let's flip the board briefly to have a look at the US 10-year, the Japanese yen, because we've been hearing from the Bank of Japan's deputy governor. Currently the yen at 154, the 10-year yielding 452, $76 a barrel on Brent, and gold just up 0.1%. So the lines coming through from Deutsche Bank. Fixed income traders adding a record-breaking fourth quarter. Revenue there up 26%. Costs, though, something of a hamper. The CFO has been speaking to Bloomberg. Take a listen.
All of the businesses were up: rates, credit, FX, and emerging markets. So really broad-based strength in a market that where there was a lot of movement, frankly. the geopolitical events, sort of shifts in economic tides, rate changes, all of those things were playing through. And to your question, yes, certainly the first few weeks of the year have demonstrated a continuation of those trends from the fourth quarter. So we're encouraged by that.
Deutsche Bank CFO James von Moltke speaking to Bloomberg's Oliver Crook, of course, on the back of those earnings. And we hope to bring you more of that interview through the next few hours. Again, the fixed income team at Deutsche Bank putting in a record quarter in the fourth quarter. Costs, though, possibly a concern for some investors out there. The bank has performed very well in terms of the shares over the last 12 months, up about 67%. Let's return now to the plane crash and the investigation that continues in Washington, D.C. A passenger jet colliding with a military helicopter as it approached Reagan National Airport. 64 people were on board the American Airlines flight. A search is ongoing in the Potomac River. Bloomberg's aviation reporter, Danny Lee, has been following the story. Danny, bring us up to speed.
So we've just had a press conference from some US officials describing the conditions they are working with right now, and divers are very much in search and rescue mode to try and find any survivors in the Potomac River, just to see if any of the 64 passengers aboard the plane, any of the US Army personnel on the helicopter in this mid-air collision, if they can be found. And right now there's a critical golden window to try and find any survivors at the moment, but clearly conditions are very difficult. It's cold, it's dark, the divers searching at the moment are operating in icy conditions, murky waters of 8 feet of water. So it's very challenging at the moment. And of course, divers will have to sidestep some of the wreckage potentially. But yeah, tough conditions right now in the very dark of night in the nation's capital. But a very tragic accident has taken place just outside Washington Reagan National Airport, a very busy airport at the very least. And so, yeah, a lot of answers, questions needed, and answers as well, and recriminations from this very tragic of accidents.
Yeah, this is an ongoing situation. The rescue, of course, operation continues, and we will continue to bring our viewers updates when they cross. Danny Lee, thank you very much indeed, our aviation reporter and expert with the latest on that story out of Washington, D.C. We get back to the earnings story right now because Sanofi, of course, the drug maker, has come through with a big announcement around buybacks. This with a focus, of course, on a more positive outlook in terms of revenue streams coming through for 2025. So planning to buy back 5 billion euros in terms of a buyback. They do see higher profit growth. This is a business that's moved away from the consumer part of the business to more focus on vaccines, particularly their respiratory vaccines. So Sanofi preparing and planning a 5 billion euro share buyback. In terms of dividend per share, that came in at €3.92. Fourth quarter earnings per share missed estimates for Sanofi. They see fourth quarter sales growth of 10.3%. That is 2024 business earnings per share guidance. In terms of sales, those came in at a constant FX rate of 10% was the increase. Sales coming in the fourth quarter above the estimates in the fourth quarter, 10.5 billion euros. The estimates had been for 10.4 billion, but the redhead is focused on this 5 billion euro share buyback for Sanofi. We're going to speak to the CFO of that business, François-Xavier Roger, at 7 a.m. UK time. So tune in for his take on the numbers coming through from that drugs maker. On the macro front, we have just had lines coming through in terms of France's preliminary fourth quarter GDP falling 0.1% in the most recent quarter for the fourth quarter. That's quarter on quarter, so it's a contraction of 0.1%. The estimates had been that growth would be flat, so it's a worse than expected picture for the growth in France. Of course, the European Central Bank is coming through with its decision later today, fully expected to cut to 2.75%. The question really is, will the European Central Bank have to do more? Will they need to be more aggressive given the lackluster growth we're seeing both in France and in Germany? 104, as you can see, on euro dollar as investors weigh up that softer print on the growth front coming out of France. Now, some other stories making the news this Thursday. Germany's parliament has approved a resolution for tougher immigration rules after the far-right AfD helped a mainstream party secure a majority For the first time, Chancellor Olaf Scholz accused Conservative leader Friedrich Merz of resorting to populism ahead of the election next month. Merz's bloc is currently leading the polls ahead of the AfD and Scholz's Social Democrats. And Bloomberg has learned that Renault wants a premium for its stake in Nissan if Honda takes over its Japanese car-making rival. We're told representatives for the French car maker flew to Japan earlier this week to voice concerns over how the tie-up may be structured. Honda and Nissan announced a merger late last year aimed at helping them compete in the global car industry. And BBVA posted fourth quarter profit that was well above expectations. Spain's second largest lender also announced a share buyback worth around €1 billion. The bank promised to pay out up to 50% of its profit to shareholders. And CaixaBank has reported net income for the fourth quarter that beat estimates. The Spanish lender will also launch a share buyback program for as much as €500 million. And the opening trade will speak with the CaixaBank CEO at 7:20am UK time, followed by the BBVA chair at 7:30am. So a deep dive in terms of the Spanish banking space, given the beats that came through for the earnings on both fronts. No doubt questions about the buyback as well. Right, to geopolitics and the Middle East now, because the Palestinian Authority Prime Minister says his government wants to rebuild Gaza with help from the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia, but that would require Israeli forces leaving the territory and removing Hamas from power. Mohammed Mustafa spoke exclusively with Bloomberg about how he sees that happening.
Saudi Arabia has said that openly and publicly that they want to engage, they want to have a more integrated, more peaceful region. But he also said that without the Palestinian statehood issue is addressed in the right way, nothing will happen.
Right.
So we do count on the support of our brothers in Saudi Arabia and the region. And of course, many countries around the world that has been supportive of our cause and Palestinian statehood. As you know, we have about 149 countries do recognize Palestine, despite all the challenges and difficulties and etc. So we have every reason to believe that this is doable. It is tough, it is difficult, but maybe the time has finally come.
So if the time has come, it's going to have to run through Washington with the new Trump administration. This is a delicate situation for you because the PA's relationship with the Trump administration, the last Trump administration, was somewhat strained. Tell us how it's going in the first weeks of this administration.
I think I have every reason to believe that this administration will actually help us all do the right deal, a balanced deal that could hopefully end the conflict in the region.
And do you have that feeling because of a relationship that you've started with the president or with people around him?
Well, I think, as I said, I mean, the good news here, if you like, is that there's the bilateral dimension, but there is also the regional dimensions and the global dimension. Everybody in the world now wants to see Palestinians have their own state. Everybody in Europe wants to see that. Many people in the U.S., but also many people in the United Nations system and many countries in the region. So it's a public, it's kind of the right thing to do, if you like. And I think the momentum that we have seen, even before the administration officially started on January 20th, their engagement from day one, as you know, Steve Witkoff is in the region. He will probably in Gaza today, as he said.
Yes, he was.
So that shows engagement and interest, and he's obviously taken time to discover the place and learn about what's going on. And I'm sure that this will be very helpful.
Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa speaking exclusively to Bloomberg's Ethan Bronner in Ramallah. Coming up, and what else to think about today as we lead up, of course, to the European Central Bank's decision. Before that, 10 a.m. UK time, Euro area fourth quarter GDP. That's after the number for France came in softer than estimated. 1:15 p.m. It is the ECB rate decision, followed, of course, by the press conference, which will arguably be more important. That's at 1:45 p.m. That's because traders are fully pricing in and expecting a 25 basis point cut by the European Central Bank to 2.75%. And at 1:30 p.m. UK time, Still on the macro front, we're going to get fourth quarter GDP for the US. That is the first reading. Jay Powell referencing the relative strength of the US economy, which is allowing the Fed to stay on hold yesterday during that press conference. And after the market, we will be getting Apple earnings after, of course, we got the numbers through from Meta, Microsoft and Tesla. Concerns from some analysts as they downgrade that stock, particularly when it comes to sales of the iPhone and what Apple can offer on AI. Coming up, we're going to speak to the CEO, talking of AI, of Swiss engineering and technology firm ABB. Orders surging on data center demand. But do the innovations of DeepSeek in China pose a challenge for the build-out of energy and data centers going forward? We will be speaking to the CEO of that company in the next few minutes. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, ABB's orders rose in the fourth quarter as demand for power-hungry data centers drives growth in the Swiss manufacturer's electrification business. I'm joined now, very pleased to say, by the ABB CEO, Morten Wierod. Morten, good morning. The orders and the demand that you're seeing in the fourth quarter, to what extent do they set you up for momentum in 2025? Is that going to follow through? Can you build on that? What is the picture looking like in terms of demand as you push forward?
Oh, thanks, Tom. And it was a good quarter for us, especially on the order side, but also the revenue that came out on a record high level for the quarter and for the year. So with that momentum, we are positive now for 2025 as well, and coming out with a guidance of kind of a mid-single digit growth of the year and continue to improve on that record level performance we had now in 24. We believe we can make another record year of 2025.
Is the guidance overly conservative?
No, I think it's a positive guidance. I mean, when you break one record, you want to take the next one. So I think it's a fair judgment of our markets. We play both in the electrification and the automation market, and it's a good place to be these days.
Okay, so electrification doing very, very well. When does robotics turn around?
I think we saw a starting of a turnaround already now in the fourth quarter. It's the first time for quite many quarters that we had a positive order momentum. And that was also on the backdrop that we have to debook about $130 million in that part of the business. So now we are turning the corner, and I think we will see a sequential improvement over the year. There's not going to be a rapid takeout, but we start to see that there is now more of a positive momentum in that field as well, both in Asia, but also in Americas and in Europe on that side. So I think we've turned the corner also on that part of the business.
Morten, what are you and the team doing around DeepSeek? I mean, if we're able to produce models that are more efficient, does that not pose a big question mark around the build-out of data centers going forward? Any of your clients, any of your customers pulling back on spend, having conversations with you about being more conservative in terms of what we've seen as a result of those more efficient models?
Not so far. You have to remember, last week we had discussions about, was it $500 billion of new spend of AI and data centers. Then you had the Monday event on DeepSeek. This is just, I think, also a sign of a market with that kind of volatility, but of that kind of a market. So we believe in the long term of AI, the long term of data center. That is clearly a need. Then it's always a discussion who's going to be the winner in that market. But I don't think that anyone questions that if AI is a thing that will go away. I think it definitely will. It's here to stay, and it's going to be also significant investment in the future. That's what we hear when we talk with all our partners and the customers. The feedback is kind of the recommitment to that. And we rather welcome new innovations. If we can do this with better energy efficiency than what we see today, that would only be a positive, I think, and if we could also get more widespread access to AI so that it can benefit more customers, more bigger part of the society, I think that would rather be a positive as I see it.
What is your exact exposure to data centers, and how does that compare to your competitors?
For us, our electrification business, which is about half of ABB, it stands for about this year 15% on our order intake. And they had on electrification business had a really great end to the year with the 16% of growth. And but we also, without taking out that data center growth, the rest of the business is still about 10% growth. So that means data center is booming, that's correct. But even the rest of the whole electrification of everything is really driving the whole momentum of the company today. So data center is like a turbocharger on the growth, but the underlying foundation is still very much there. The world is continuing to go electric.
The Trump administration looking to dismantle at least parts of the Inflation Reduction Act. Do you change how you think about the US market, your investments there?
Not really. We're going to see continued strong investment in the United States. It's one of the growth market of the last years, and we also believe that for the coming years, because you will see the need of improved infrastructure in the United States. And that is not going to change with the IRA. Maybe some of the investments is going to be transferred to other parts. But we will see when it comes to more energy, and that means still more renewable. I think we'll continue to see a strong investment in the solar space. When I talk with utility customers in the United States, and you will see more of liquid gas and pipelines as well, which again, where electrification and automation is needed to make all of that happen. So that doesn't really change.
Morten Wierod, CEO of ABB, thank you very much for joining us after the order numbers jumped in the last quarter for ABB and projecting a decent picture ahead in terms of the demand outlook for electrification, and robotics may be turning around as well. Now, Deutsche Bank fixed income traders closed out last year with the best fourth quarter on record as they benefited from volatility tied to the US elections in November and turbulence in European politics. Earlier, Deutsche Bank CFO spoke to Bloomberg's Oliver Crook.
All of the businesses were up: rates, credit, FX, and emerging markets. So really broad-based strength in a market that where there was a lot of movement, frankly. The geopolitical events, sort of shifts in economic tides, rate changes, all of those things were playing through. And to your question, yes, certainly the first few weeks of the year have demonstrated a continuation of those trends from the fourth quarter. So we're encouraged by that. And what you're seeing is sort of in the markets a fair amount of trading, given how much the news flow sort of affects markets on a day-by-day basis, but also a degree of confidence now in corporate boardrooms with financial sponsors to position for activity this year, given a rate decline. So we're in the part of the rate cycle where money's becoming a little bit less expensive. But also, I think, more confidence about the growth prospects, particularly in the United States, but not only.
Right, and also I was also noticing that some of your competitors also did very, very well in FIC, and so Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, I think, up 35%. Are you at sort of risk of falling behind? How do you maintain that momentum? How do you build out that structure to continue to grow at that pace?
Sure. Well, we have been investing quite steadily and continuously. So what you're seeing is a steady recovery or gaining of market share. We have investments that are still to come on stream, if you like, in 2025. So no reason why we should change that trajectory. And also, by the way, one quirk of it, if you look at the 2-year performance, you also get a good sense of gained market share and sustained in 24. So we're really encouraged by what we're seeing in our FIC markets business.
And you've got the figure for the buyback, $750 million likely to be distributed. Is that right? In about the first half of the year? Is that?
Yeah, it may spill into sort of volume into the third quarter, but $750 million of a buyback, $2.1 billion of total distributions announced today.
And what are you looking at in the sort of back half of the year? You said that large target of $8 billion through 2025. Are you going to exceed that, and by how much?
Well, look, we're always going to be prudent as a management team on distributions and be ready to potentially seek another buyback when we can see where we are operating through the year. So there are some good reasons, we think, to have asked for and received the $750 million. CRR3 is new. Our economic development is still uncertain. Impact of tariffs in Germany. So some reasons to hold back. But we think that at 13.8 of a common equity tier 1 ratio And with our outlook in terms of earnings and performance this year, we think we'll be in a comfortable place by the end of the year.
And something that got my attention also in the numbers was the sort of looking at the cost-income ratio for this year a little bit higher than had been anticipated, despite the fact that costs are staying more or less steady. That's more investments. Can you break that down a little bit?
Well, there are two things going through non-interest expensive. One is very high non-operating costs this year, and obviously we're unhappy about that level. Altogether, about $2.6 billion of non-operating costs, of which $2 billion had to do with litigation matters. And in fact, there were three items that were the largest part of that. So that's obviously something we're not happy with.
Deutsche Bank CFO James von Moltke speaking to Bloomberg's Oliver Crick on the back of those earnings. Plenty more coming up, including we're going to set you up for what to think about when it comes to the Apple earnings story. That later today out of the US. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. From the Fed to the ECB decision, and what a different set of circumstances. Look at the data coming through in terms of the European growth picture. We get more data later today. French GDP coming in below estimates. And here's a reminder of just how soft the growth picture is in Europe and the challenges for the ECB. You're looking, the most recent print, September. This is September of last year, and a lackluster 0.4%. The estimates are you get essentially flat growth in Europe coming forward through 2025. 90 basis points priced in for the ECB. They're expected to cut today by 25 basis points. Is that going to be enough, though? Let's flip the board and have a look in terms of how the European stock performance is diverging from the macro. Because in terms of the momentum, the trade is there for European stocks. Another record yesterday. And the momentum in terms of relative strength index and the spread when it comes to the stock 600 versus the S&P is now in positive territory. So the momentum seems to be with European stocks. Why is that? Less exposed to technology that, of course, has been hit specifically in this week. So maybe the lack of tech is helping European stocks, at least so far. Let's flip the board and have a look in terms of what to expect, talking of tech, when it comes to Apple. The downgrades are coming through for Apple. There are concerns, of course, about sales of iPhones, the Chinese market, and, of course, the AI play and whether or not Apple is doing enough to entice customers with artificial intelligence. This is the stock price in the white line. The blue line is the number of downgrades. They have had now a fifth downgrade just this month. The fifth downgrade just this month, the latest one coming through from Oppenheimer on some of those concerns. Those earnings dropping later today. Now, it is a busy day, of course, for European earnings. We're going to be speaking about the latest results as they break this morning, as well as interviews with leaders of Roche, CaixaBank, BBVA and Shell. We will also bring you an interview with the UK Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. That's at 8:50 a.m. London time. The opening trade is up next. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.